In my trouble, I cried to the Lord, and he answered me. Deliver my soul, O Lord, from lying lips, from a deceitful tongue. What shall be given to you, and what more shall be done to you, you deceitful tongue? Sharp arrows of the warrior, with the burning coals of the broom tree. Woe is me, for I sojourn in Meshech. For I dwell among the tents of Kedar. Too long has my soul had its dwelling with those who hate peace. I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. Before us this morning, we have a man who is hurting. A man whose soul is sore, bruised. This man is distressed. He's discouraged. And in a very real-time way, he is disheartened. Verse 1 begins with his distress. And he lets us know the psyche of how he's thinking. So we know just from reading our text that he's got some problems. He's got some issues. He has some circumstances in his life. He has distress. And he reminds himself at the outset in verse 1, I know that I can talk to God. I know I can talk to God. I have spoken to God when I've been in trouble in the past. I cried out to him and he answered me. So he says that right off the bat in verse 1. In my trouble, I cried to the Lord. This is past tense. He's saying in the past, I've had some very difficult times. I've called out to God, i.e. I've prayed to God, and what? God answered me. Right off the bat, verse 1, it gives us an exceptional, true principle that we can apply to life. When in trouble, cry out to God, and He will answer you. It's a great, phenomenal principle that God offers every single one of His children to cry out to Him in trouble. And in verse 2, he really gives us the elements of his trouble. He becomes more focused and he tells us exactly what that trouble looks like. He says, verse 2, now God, in this situation, deliver my soul, O Lord, from two things. From lying lips and from a deceitful tongue. Now, this is poetry. These verses are poetical, and we have to be mindful of the literature. The literature of poetry is at times very metaphorical. So he wants us to have the image of lying lips, of the lips of a human that are continually lying, that they're talking bad about him, that they're doing something, they're slander perhaps. And he says not only that, the lying lips, but he wants you to think about a deceitful tongue. A tongue that is coming against him as a child of God, as a man of God. We know very quickly, we think to Jesus' half-brother, James, who tells us, hey, the tongue, the power of life and death is in the tongue, and you can do some really, really bad things with the tongue. In fact, you can almost bring up the essence of hell itself with the tongue and how you use it and apply it in life. We know this to be true, and here he's saying this is true in my life. The psalmist, this man who's hurt, this man whose soul is sore and bruised, and he's distressed and discouraged and disheartened. He says, Lord, I need you to deliver me from these lying lips, this deceitful tongue. And so he shares with us a situation, and then verses 3 and 4, he goes into the results of what will happen, what he knows will happen. He knows that God will get justice. And we know, brothers and sisters, that eventually, someday, that all sin will be paid for and will be judged. All sin will be judged. Every man and woman will be judged according to their sin. Those of us that have come under the blood of Jesus Christ, the Bible tells us we owe nothing. We owe nothing for our sin. We are debt-free when it comes to sin. But those that have not come under the blood, and those that sin and do so without thinking about the end times, without thinking about paying for their sins, and that their sin is going to be paid for in death, and there's going to be ramifications for their wrongdoing. The psalmist here, this man here, he says, I know that one day they're going to pay for it. Listen to his heart. Listen to the passion in his descriptive words in verses 3 and 4. What shall be given to you? talking about the one with these lying lips and deceitful tongue. What shall be given to you? And what more shall be done to you, you deceitful tongue? Now, verse 3 is a very interesting phrase. Verse 3 is the words, the phrase, it's unknown to us on a daily level, but if you research, if you look back, you can even find it at other places in Scripture in the Old Testament. This phrase is actually a curse. It had the idea of me going to Matt Phoenix and I want to give him my word on something. So I say, Matt, far be it for you to do this or for me to do this to you, and if I do, even more so be added to me. And it's a way of binding yourself in a type of curse. Look at verse 3 again. He says, what shall be given to you? So he has the idea of this one that's lying about him, that is deceiving, speaking deception about him. He's saying, what shall be given to you? And what more shall be done to you? Shall be added to you? What more shall? This is a curse. And he's really saying here that I don't understand. He's speaking hypothetically to this person that's coming against him. He said, I don't understand why you would ever did this in the first place. Why you ever acted like you were true to me in the first place. Because you never had any intention of not doing me evil. You never had any intention of that. What shall be given to you? What more shall be done to you? You deceitful tongue. And then he clarifies that even more, the punishment. Verse 4. Sharp arrows of the warrior. And he wants you to know. He wants you to know what is coming for this one who's deceitful, this one who is speaking derogatory towards him. He wants you to know what is coming for this one that's lying about him. He said, these aren't just arrows, but I want you to know they're sharp arrows. They're arrows that one has taken time to fashion and to mold into a very sharp object. Because this sharp object, this arrow, is now a weapon of death. And he's saying to the ones that come against the children of God, such as this, that just live life, pedal to the metal, no care in the world about God, about God's people, that they're just deceiving, they're lying, they're doing all these things. He says, what's coming for you is death. And he lets us know that by the description of the sharp arrows, and he combines it with the burning coals of the broom tree. This idea of the burning coals. Now, the broom tree is akin to the juniper tree. And it makes very exceptionally good charcoal. In fact, in the Jewish midrash, which midrash is just another word for commentary, like Matthew Henry's commentary, one of the Jewish commentaries upon the scripture says that there was a story about these two men that were in the Arabian desert where the juniper tree or the broom tree is prevalent, and they built a fire. And the charcoals were so hot and such of good nature that they left and came back a year later, and the fire was still burning. The coals were still burning. He's saying, this is a hot fire that never goes out. And this is what you're going to get. You're going to get the death arrow. You're going to get the sharpness of the arrow, a death weapon against you. It's coming against you. And you're going to get the burning coals that will not go out. Consequently, these burning coals were also sometimes fashioned upon arrows and shot into dwellings or tents or things, cities, to set fire and ruin the lives of people. So the psalmist here, this man whose heart is hurt because he's been hurt by lying lips and a deceitful tongue, he's saying, yeah, but get ready for what's coming for you. You deserve death, and you deserve arrows, and you deserve burning coals. Flip over just a little bit to your left to Psalm chapter 64. So Psalm chapter 64. I want to bring out the description here by paralleling it with Psalm 64 verses 1 through 6. Here the psalmist is in a similar fashion praying for deliverance from secret enemies, but you'll recognize the language and the similarity here. Hear my voice, O God, in my complaint, verse 1. Preserve my life from the dread of the enemy. Hide me from the secret counsel of evildoers, from the tumult of those who do iniquity, who have sharpened their tongue like a sword. They aimed bitter speech as their arrow to shoot from the concealment at the blameless. Suddenly they shoot at him and do not fear. They hold fast to themselves an evil purpose. They talk of laying snares secretly. They say, who can see them? They devise injustices, saying, we are ready with a well-conceived plot. For the inward thought and the heart of man are deep. This parallels what this man who is hurt is saying here, that these people are bad dudes, right? These are metaphors, this idea of these lying lips and this deceitful tongue. What he's saying is these individuals that have come against me, they're bad. They're bad people. They're hurting my life. And he's lamenting. He's crying out to God. He's saying, I'm tired of it. I'm sick of it. And they deserve death. Well, you might think that it would end there and he would stop and say, oh, but I want to pray for them. I love them. No, let's continue on. It goes even deeper. Verse 5, his anguish. Look at verse 5. Woe is me. This is an emphatic pronunciation in the Hebrew language. He says, woe is me. He's saying, I am about at the end of who I am as a person. Woe is me. Why? For I sojourn in Meshech, for I dwell among the tents of Kedar. There's an interesting connotation about the word sojourn. He reminds us here that he is in a place, what? Where he's not a citizen of, a place where he does not truly belong. He's just merely passing through. He lives there, but without the full rights of those who are native to that land. Right? He's saying, I'm just passing through. I sojourn where? In Meshech, and I dwell among the tents of Kedar. Now, there's some other clues here as far as geography goes. Meshech think with me, Jerusalem being the center. God's land, the land of Canaan, or let's just say the city of God, Jerusalem. And to the northwest of Jerusalem, in modern-day Turkey, is where Meshech is. It's a far piece from Jerusalem. And now, the corresponding part of verse 5, the second part of it, the tents of Kedar, which you'll hear that phrase in Song of Solomon, the tents of Kedar, which are very black. They are southwest of Jerusalem. And so you have these places that are very far distance away. Kedar is in the Arabian desert. It's a long ways away, southeast of Jerusalem. So the question is, did he live there? Did he truly live there? Or is he being poetic? Or is he trying to draw a metaphor about Meshech and Kedar? Well, it appears that he's drawing a metaphor. It appears that he's trying to bring something out. And what he's saying is, I've been so far away. I'm not where I'm supposed to be. He's saying, I am among people that are not after your heart, God, and I'm tired and I'm sick of it. Woe is me, God. Woe is me, for I sojourn, I live in Meshech. Meshech and Kedar were outliers. They were outsiders. They were not in Jerusalem. And he's saying, I am separated from the people of God. Verse 6, too long has my soul had its dwelling with those who hate peace. He really expounds and brings out verse 5 here. He says, I've been among these people and my soul. Notice he says soul. He's not just talking about person here. He's not just talking about his physical body, but he's talking about who he is as a person, the essence of who he is, his soul. And he's already let us know that his soul is sore, that he hurts, that he's distressed, that he's discouraged, and that he's disheartened. And now he's telling us, my soul, God, I'm in a place where I can almost not take it anymore. My soul hurts. My soul should not be around these people. I'm sorry. They're not my people. I will not be here forever. I have a different ascent. And he says, I'm with these people. And then he clarifies, these people hate peace. They hate peace. So here he begins at the conclusion of this song to really draw out and bring contrast to him and then the heathens, we'll just say. He loves the truth and he loves peace. They hate the truth, they lie, and they love war. And so he's drawing a separation. In verse 7, he says, I am for peace, but when I speak, they are for war. And the idea in verse 7 is that as he speaks peace into the situation, into the lives of the people around him, the heathens, that they just drown him out. I speak peace, singular. Plural, they are for war. Have you been there? I don't think it's a far stretch to in some ways say that we as evangelical church are there now. I mean, is there anybody else that hurts with what we see in culture? Is there any among us this morning that at times your soul is sore because it's just an onslaught of paganism. It's an onslaught of morals out the window, that anything goes, and it's Babylon revisited, and we're just trying to keep our heads straight, and we're just trying to read our Bible and stay focused, and we're trying to come around to other brothers and sisters to worship together and encourage one another, and then we go back out Monday morning into this world gone mad, and then now we start to see we can't even hide in Canadian. The internet has brought the world and all of its culture right here to Canadian, and then we find it in our junior high, in our high school, in our elementary, and we find it in Allsops, and we find it in Follett, and we find it all over the place. And we're just going mad, man, because we know this is not our home, and it's so stinking hard. And we turn bitter. And we turn bitter. So what's the answer for this man who hurts in Psalm 120? What's the answer for the man who has been lied about and has been spoken deceitful words against? And what's in it for this man whose soul is sore and bruised, and he's distressed and he's discouraged and is disheartened? What's the answer? Where lies the prescription? Where is the remedy? Well, he tells us all the way back in verse 1. In my trouble, I cried to the Lord, and He answered me. As we transition into a time of conclusion and then application, I want you to look with me at the backdrop, the canvas, if you will, for this portrait of what we find in Psalm 120. The backdrop is that this is the first of 15 Psalms that are classified, 120 through 134, as a song of ascents, or the song of degrees, or the song of ascending. These 15 Psalms amongst the Bible's hymn book, the 150 of them, these 15 Psalms are greatly studied by scholars. Many scholars believe that these Psalms, the 15 of them, correspond to the 15 steps there as you would approach the temple in Jerusalem. There was 15 steps between the outer courts and then the inner courts, and that each psalm was recited at each step as you ascended up to. Other scholars believe that these psalms were sung on the way into Jerusalem, and the prevalence of study seems to point to, at the very least, these 15 psalms were sung by believers as they pilgrimed to Jerusalem for 3 feasts throughout the year. Now I want you to think with me as we parallel this and draw it into the New Testament, into Christ. I want you to think about Christ as He would make His pilgrimage to Jerusalem for the Passover. I don't believe it's improbable to say that perhaps Christ sung this song as He was ascending up the hill to Jerusalem. In my trouble, as He's saying, I cried to the Lord and He answered me. And then I want you to think with me a little bit more specific as He ascended another hill, the Mount Calvary. And as He had the opportunity, as this man did and as we do, to take the tragedies of life and to take the heathen atmosphere and the culture and to turn bitter. Instead of turning bitter, Christ turned better. And he went to the cross and he gave his life and he cried out and he says, I cried to the Lord and he answered me. And God answered him on the third day and rose him from the dead, victorious over sin, death, and hell. A song of ascents. This man, the psalmist who wrote this thousands of years ago, Psalm 120, these 7 verses of one psalm, teaches us to turn better instead of bitter. To teach us that when we're mad and when we want to point fingers at people and say, why aren't they in church more? When we want to point fingers at somebody and say, why don't they get it? I taught them when they were younger. What's wrong with them? What's wrong with that person? And we talk about it in our little groups and we start telling, I just don't know what's going on. I don't know what to do. I'm just so mad and this person's this and that person. Did you hear about, can I tell you, did y'all hear about, no, I'm not going to tell you. But you know how it goes, right? Did y'all hear about so-and-so? And we start going in and our hearts turn bitter. What the lost people of Canadian need is not a First Baptist church that is bitter, but a First Baptist church that is better.